Okay, so now after the introduction, I'm really happy to introduce, to invite Professor Vladan Joler to give his lecture titled Autonomy of an AI System. This is the name of one of his works that he will probably talk about. And I would like to introduce Vladan Joler. He is an academic, researcher, and artist whose work blend data investigation, counter cartography, investigative journalism, writing, data visualization, critical design, and numerous other disciplines. He explores the visualize different technical and social aspects of algorithmic transparency, digital labor exploitation, invisible infrastructures, and many other contemporary phenomena in the intersection between technology and society. Vladan Joler's work is included, among others, in the permanent collections of the MoMA in New York City, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the Design Museum in London, and also in the permanent exhibition of the Ars Electronica Center. His work has been exhibited in more than 100 international exhibitions worldwide. He has received numerous awards, including the 2019 prestigious Design of the Year Award by the Design Museum in London, and the Starts Prize also the same year, honorably mentioned by the European Commission and Ars Electronica. So I would like to welcome Vladan to give his talk. Thanks so much for accepting our invitation.
I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy and surprised that someone wants to start a conference with such a, let's say, critical angle. And but okay, let's try. And so basically, yeah, I think we heard now a lot of different fancy words that are kind of explaining what I'm doing, but basically, like what I was really feeling that I'm doing in last, let's say, 10 years, it's mostly feeling like being some kind of detective and trying to, you know, investigate what's behind the screen, you know, and sometimes those investigations were like, led me to different kinds of adventures. And one of the biggest adventure on that road was basically adventure of creating this map that I'm going to present. It's called Anatomy of an AI System. I will also present some other maps also, because now you will see in a few minutes, I'm completely into making big, black and scary maps. But yeah, I will start with this one and then we will see where it will finish. No? So I will try to share the screen. So this is the critical moment of the presentation. Okay. Okay. We are there. Huh? So basically, as many other investigations that I did in the past, this one also started with a human being, and but I will come back to the position of the human being because that's somehow like really complex, and I don't want to call this human being a user, because we will probably see at the end that maybe the term user, it's not the best one. No? But anyway, the only thing that we had when we started the investigation, it was that object that it's, you know, it's still called Amazon Alexa, or it's called Amazon Echo. So this is the object that we wanted to investigate, basically, to see what is this kind of like extended anatomy of that object. Because like most of the network devices that we use are basically not what we see. You know, like for example, when we are using Google, you know, when we are using Facebook, when we are using many different objects, even the phones, the applications on the phone, or so on. What we are seeing and what we have in our hands, in most of the time, it's just some kind of like interface or something like this. But the real anatomy is somewhere else. And in a way, I together with Kate Crawford, I wanted to investigate that extended anatomy and to try to understand from the position of like one simple human being who is like, you know, like looking at this object, like what we can see. And in a way, the first thing that you can do is to open device, you know, but the problem in many cases, even in many cases, like opening device, it's such a, you know, act of violence in a sense of like, it's most of the time forbidden. It's not that someone will arrest you, but in most of the time you will break some kind of, you know, like insurance or some kind of like a guarantee for the object. And even some of those objects have a different kinds of, let's say, booby traps within them, in a sense of that when you open them, you are going to break them because they are in most of the cases designed to break. And this is the first some kind of like a layer of this investigation. It's this like okay, investigating materiality that we have within our hands, and this is like still really small part of this like huge anatomy, and still, so even on that level we have a lot of layers of untransparency. So for example, what is like really growing up in last 10-15 years is this idea of, again, this, it's not a new idea, but this idea of like planned obsolescence, idea of that those devices are going to, you know, like become obsolete like really fast in like 4 or 5 years. But another problem, it's like, you know, something that it's called our right to repair. And that's also like some field that I really didn't, you know, follow before. I realized that it's like really hard to find the blueprints, the maps for those devices. So you, for example, have some kind of like a, you know, like a indie black market for the blueprints that is mostly like Chinese blueprints that are then distributed to among the some kind of, you know, illegal repair shops around, and they are like sharing this kind of blueprints of the devices. And this is really interesting. This is really interesting in the case, for example, my wife, she's from Cuba. And then in one moment in time, they had like this situation of like when the government realized that they were not able to follow up, they said, okay, we need to give a chance to our citizens to repair the object they have. So they had like completely opposite idea, to give to all the citizens some kind of blueprints and ways how to repair their object. Here it's completely opposite, because the companies want to have you to trap you within the birth, life, and death of this object, you know, because in a sense they want to be continuously the owners of the object, not so not to give you the chance to play with this object and to change something or to modify this object. And then we have like this another problem of diagnostic tools, another problem of for example, some screws in those objects are specially made not to be open. So in order to open the screw, you need to have like special screwdriver and so on, so on, so on. So it's kind of like one trap after another trap. But the point, it's like that even on this first level, because like this huge anatomy of this object, this is the only thing that we have in our hands. Everything else is somewhere else. And even there are like different layers of untransparency. So what's going on after then? You have like this device when you say, for example, I don't know, Alexa, you know, what is the weather forecast in Tel Aviv? This device will communicate with a router that you have at home, and then it will go into the vast network of different internet service providers, different internet exchange points. Then we are speaking about this kind of like cables around the, under the ocean and so on, so on, so on. So here we are I spent like some time investigating and trying to find a way how to investigate those internet internet service providers and how to do topography. So for example, like 5-6 years ago, I was completely into this kind of structures, you know, trying to understand how to map, how to visualize, how to understand how those like internet service providers are connected, what is the power relation between them, so how then they are connected between each other within the internet exchange point, and so on, so on. But here we have like a, you know, this is the lecture for itself, but I can say that there are like 3 main powers that exist, and in every of those like white dots that we hear on this picture. So every next device, so from here to this kind of invisible Amazon infrastructure out there somewhere, you know, there is like hundreds and hundreds of different devices, and each of those devices have a chance to see, to monitor, have a chance to filter, and have a chance to make it slower or faster. So it's a kind of censorship, surveillance, and throttling as the 3 different processes that exist. And those 3 processes that are basically technical processes are giving like those internet service providers and other actors that are kind of hidden in those networks, these kind of different powers, you know, different kinds of like powers. And then, you know, like there are different relations, because all of those companies, even for this process of, for example, like typing www.facebook.com or like saying something to Amazon Echo, you don't feel this like time, because it's happening in the 1 millisecond or few seconds. Basically, a lot of different governments, a lot of different actors on the way have their fingers on what's going on. But that's another topic now. And then after that, we are jumping into the corporate realm of Amazon. And then they have like huge amount of like different kinds of like infrastructure, servers. And then within those servers, we are jumping into the let's say, main topic of today's conference. And that's something that we want to call AI. And then, so the voice is coming here, and then the being recognized, then it's being transformed into the information. Then, you know, the information is going back again to the internet infrastructure, and then, for example, to the specialized website that have information about weather in Tel Aviv. Then information is coming back again to the Amazon infrastructure. Then it's again being sent to some kind of another AI system that is going to transform this into information into the voice, and then this voice is being sent back to our device. So it's some kind of spectacle of different events that is happening just because we are too lazy to do something. Most of the times we are using those objects to, you know, turn on and off the light in your kitchen or in your room. But basically what we are turning on and off, it's a planetary scale infrastructure. So every time when we say, hey, Alexa, turn on my light, it's not that just our light it's turning on. It's like hundreds and hundreds of different servers, hundreds and hundreds of different routers that are doing little bzz, bzz, bzz. And it's not just this, it's just some kind of, it's again, this kind of invisible infrastructure behind that is then analyzing what we said when we are turning on the light. So basically this simple turning on and off in light, it's basically turning, like sending like thousands and thousands of signals in different directions of that we turned on and off the light in our home. So we can think about this, you know, this spectacle of different events that we are triggering every time when we are online, when we are doing online from different points of view. And so, for example, we can think about that from the point of, I don't know, electricity consumption, from the point of ecology in that sense. Like why, you know, if we want to turn on and off the light, is it more effective that we burn some energy as a humans, or we need to involve the planetary scale computation system to do that? And then the question is like, what is the CO2 footprint of the planetary scale computation system? that need to turn on and off our light in our room. And then you go in the direction of understanding that, for example, nowadays the data servers are producing, I don't know, CO2, I don't know, in the same amount than the, for example, all of those flights or all of this aviation industry and everything before COVID and stuff like this. So then you realize that, you know, like this vast infrastructure, it's not cloud, it's not invisible, it's not, okay, it's most of the time invisible, but in a way it's not immaterial, and it's not something that it's like ephemeral as Silicon Valley want us to see, but it's basically huge, and it's like using a lot of energy. And but then we in this investigation, and this is something that I was trying to understand for a lot of years, how to try to investigate, for example, those algorithms, how to try to investigate those, and I will show you later some other maps that are also into this kind of investigation. But then this one gets completely different turn, because like I was like influenced by reading some books, for example, Geology of Media, and spending a lot of time with one really amazing artist. Her name is Joanna. And so I was kind of infected with this idea of geology of media. And that idea, it's kind of like interesting because it's, you know, for example, Marshall McLuhan, it's telling us about like, you know, like the media, it's extension of our senses, you know, extension of human body. And I can understand that. But then you see Parikka in the book Geology of Media saying, okay, media, thinking about media as an extension of the earth. And then if you start to think from that direction, if you add a time component to this, like already complex map of the infrastructure that we are basically triggering, then the story is starting from here. Story is basically starting from the earth, because like, you know, 50, 60 years ago or 100 years ago, never mind, like all of those parts of infrastructure that I explain now, like all of those servers, routers, this object itself, networks and everything else, was basically different kinds of rocks. And now those different kinds of rocks are somehow transformed into this infrastructure and into something that we call AI, you know, and I'm not so big fan of this term anyway. But so the story starts with the earth, and story starts with the elements. And then I was investigating, okay, how many elements there is in this like one simple device in like mobile phone or in Amazon Echo. And basically there's like more than 3/4 of the periodic system of elements you have somehow squeezed into those objects. And then from some kind of thinking of like past and how we design the objects in the past. So for example, all of those chairs that I have here in the room are mostly like made from like 2 or 3 different elements that are sourced like, you know, from the few hundred kilometers away. So the wood from the, I don't know, forest, the metal from the mine, but everything was like kind of like simple, more simple in a sense, like not full periodic system. Each of those like technological device, contemporary technological device, it's again spectacle of different elements. And then if we try to follow each of those elements one by one, each of them can tell us a different story. And most of the time, so the stories that I was like investigating when I was investigating infrastructure, when I was investigating how the machine works, no? Were mostly stories about like algorithmic, you know, like some kind of mistakes, the story about privacy, the story about like security and stuff like this. But when you start to investigate the story from the position of the element and from this position of the stone, then all of those stories after are mostly stories about some kind of inequality. And not just this, it's stories about different kinds of exploitation. So it's like mostly exploitation of human labor and exploitation of earth. So it's kind of like, and I will try to follow up with that. So you start to follow like most of those elements from here that are part of this, like for example, lithium or coltan, cobalt, or rare earth elements or any of them. And you start with the mines, and then like you start with the conditions in mines, and then you start with locations of mines. So where are those mines? Those mines are most of the time in South America, you know, like Congo, China, and then we again starting to somehow relive this kind of colonial idea of going somewhere and like digging something, and then you realize that, you know, it's then somehow they're all like miners under the guns digging coltan for like, I don't know, like, you know, $1 per day, or sometimes they're in some kind of slavery relation, or sometimes, you know, those are the stories that you start to unfold when you start to think or to investigate what's going on in mines. Then after that, I basically, and then I realized, okay, this story is going to be really complex in a sense. And then from the position of someone who, you know, need to design something, I choose to draw this process with these triangles that are basically, I took from Christian Fuchs, and Christian Fuchs took from Marx. And it's basically, you know, like, so the triangle says like you have a resource, and then you have a labor, and then you have a product. And then this product, it's becoming a resource, and then with another labor, you have a product. Then this product is becoming a resource. So it's some kind of loop of different triangles. And I try to follow this story. So it goes like through mines, then the next is smelters and refiners, component manufacturers, and so on, so on. And I tried for each of them to understand what's going on. What are the working conditions? What are the environmental conditions? And so on, so on, so on. This tiny fabric of network, if we think about each of those nodes as a part of the network, then we are again coming to this situation. We have another network, but this time it's not the network of internet service providers. It's basically a network of different ports and a network of different locations around the globe, because this process of, if we think that we have tens and tens of different elements that are starting to unfold into the objects and join together. So it's a constant flow of materials and constant flow of different components around the globe. Because this network, this planetary scale structure, this planetary scale factory is functioning based on like the cheap transportation of those objects that are basically cargo ships that are going all around the world and stuff like this. And and for me, when I was doing this, I was thinking like, okay, this is the real Internet of Things, you know, because this is how the things really move. And in a way, a lot of parts of this process are some kind of automatic in a sense that you have a lot of robotics and stuff like this. But there is a lot of, again, labor that is kind of invisible labor, because all of this together for us, it's completely invisible labor, no? In most of the cases. The another problem, for example, here is that each of those ships, it's kind of like polluting like the same amount, creating same amount of CO2 as 50,000 cars. So, but the thing is like the price, it's not paid for this, you know. And the thing is like the person or like group of people who are on top of this pyramid are not paying this price, that each of those ships are 50,000, like 50,000 cars, no? And somehow you can unfold the story that, for example, one of the biggest owners of those like cargo ships, it's like company Maersk that is based in Denmark. And people from Denmark also don't pay this. You know, all of us, we pay this price. All of us, we pay the price of this object polluting like 50,000 cars. No? So there is many stories about like ecological disasters over there. So for example, one of the famous one, it's like digging out these rare earth elements, and we can speak about rare earth elements for all days and what they mean for, because they are some kind of alchemy for the devices that we use today. But then you have like a, you know, in this process, because you need to move for most of those like elements, you need to move the mountains in order to extract just a few kilos or grams of something, you know, and this moving of mountains means also producing a lot of, you know, disturbing ecosystems, but also in case, for example, of rare earth elements, it's like creating the huge radioactive lakes. And this is just like one of the examples that exist out there. So the, what's the time? I have 15 minutes more, huh? Oh, cool.
Yeah, even more.
Okay, so.
You have until 10:40.
Cool. Okay, I don't need to hurry so much. So, and then, so the another important aspect of this, it's when you start, for example, from here, from the point, and this is like, for example, our device being assembled in Shenzhen in one factory that it's called like Foxconn. So there's a lot of stories, of course, about Foxconn and how they you know, treated workers. Now it's probably a bit better, but in one moment they, you know, installed anti-suicide nets because all of those workers, like hundreds of thousands of them that are living within the factory and not having any other life, or jumping through the windows, but then they installed the anti-suicide nets, so they like bumped off from the net and don't hurt itself, and so on, so on. But that's not the part of the story. The part of the story, it's now our object is being assembled. Okay, and this moment in Shenzhen, in Foxconn factory, is one of the moments when everything comes to one place. You know, so this is the one, you know, important moment in this like process. But from there, if we are looking, so for example, there is like, only for iPhone, there is like around 250 first level suppliers, you know. So those companies that are providing Apple with the different components, different things that are then being assembled in Foxconn. Then those 250 suppliers have their own 250 suppliers, each of them. Then their own 250 suppliers have their own 250 suppliers. So if we continue like this, we will realize that there are like thousands and thousands of companies that are basically part of this process. So it's kind of like something that reminds a lot on some kind of fractal chain. And I really like to call this like a fractal chain of production, because like more you're zooming in, you are seeing more and more and more different structures. So for me, investigating different you know, systems, technological systems, now I found again some kind of like a black box, because in this sense, the black box is basically the production chain itself. Then we can speak about like different kinds of, so what going on within this line, within this pyramid, is basically again some kind of, you know, system of inequalities. And then I try to list all of those jobs that are here somewhere appearing on this map, try to list them on some kind of scale. And like most of us, we were like here somewhere, you know, 1,000, maybe a few thousand. But a lot of people are, you know, like you start with the zero, and you start with, let's say, unpaid labor, and then you go to underground miners, then you go to e-waste, the landfill workers, and we are here speaking about maybe $100 or less dollars per month, you know. But on the top, you are seeing, because like even this scale was not good enough to show this inequality. So we are starting from, let's say, $1 per day and ending up with $1 billion per day, or sometimes few $billion per day. So this scale, it's 1 to 1 billion. 1 billion, it's a lot of something. 1 billion, it's a million of million, no? So it's kind of, the scale of inequality is enormous, you know, because from each of those triangles, each of those, like, but we are speaking around like thousands and thousands of triangles. You are basically what you have extraction of this kind of like value, of extra value. You have an extraction that basically someone is extracting the profit. And then when you add all of this together, you are getting like huge, like extraction engine for extraction of profit, extraction of human labor, and extraction of different kinds of resources, no? And so at the end, I somehow drove this map to have 3 parts. One part, it's a birth. The middle of the map, it's life, and then the right part of the map, it's a death. So it's a birth, life, and death of one object. So what's going on the death side, it's kind of similar process, but in reverse, you know, because then you are abandoning device, and then you have a different networks of like waste management, like illegal, legal, official, unofficial. At the end, all of this like e-waste, it's becoming some kind of new geological layer, you know. But this circle, it's of course not, you know, like some kind of circle without, you know, it's not a loop, because every time we have this one circle, we are basically, you know, using some energy, exploiting some labor, exploiting some nature, creating some CO2, creating some toxic lake, and so on, so on, so on. So, and the question, it's like how we are triggering those circles. We are triggering those circles every time we buy something, every time we buy some device, every time we throw away the old one and buy a new one. We are triggering those circles. So for example, when we say, Alexa, what's the time? Or Alexa, I don't know what, we are triggering this one vertical part of the map. Still using a lot of energy, still producing a lot of things. But when we throw away this Alexa and buy a new one, then we are triggering this one. You know, then we are triggering this one. And then, so this is one, let's say, one aspect of this kind of invisibility, one aspect of this kind of like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of different layers of untransparencies that are not part, most of the time, not part of the discourse, not part of the discussion, not part of like AI, whatever. So for example, when I was like, you know, participating in some kind of, you know, EU, it's a great thing, you know, it have a lot of processes, everyone love each other and stuff like this, you know. And then there is like some kind of EU and ethics love relation in which European Union, for example, love to think that it's possible to create like ethical AI. So, and then a lot of conferences will have this kind of topic like towards the ethical AI. So my question for like ethical AI, where it's ethical, in which it from, so it depends like how you know, where do you see, where is the end of AI here? You know, is it this? Are we just going to speak about this? No? So this is ethical AI. Or maybe ethical AI is this, you know, where are those servers? And who owns those servers? And where they're placed? On which kind of energy they run? You know, or we are going to speak about this. Who is labeling this AI? How this person is being paid? You know, or we are speaking about this, like how all of those AI systems are basically, most of them based on like you know, like some kind of process of enclosure of information and data that we produce. So all of this data, it's not data about something else. It's mostly data about us, you know. So who asked us? So in which moment of this map, this AI is going to be ethical, you know? So probably just here, no? And here it's also not possible, because if I move to this like research that I did and map with Matteo Pasquinelli on like that, it's called NoScope, we will see that it's also pointless here, you know? But the one ethical AI that I would like to see is the ethical AI that starts from here and from here, so that it's ethical from Congo to the e-waste landfill in India. But the problem is how we are going to do that. How we are going to create like ethical process of production of devices, because the AI, it's not some, again, cloud. It's not some, you know, like, you know, however we speak about this from this kind of marketing point of view, you know. But if you go into anatomy of an AI that we tried to do here, you see that anatomy of an AI system is basically a planetary scale factory. And in order to make an ethical AI, you will need to make an ethical planetary scale factory. So you will need to deal with the problem of exploitation of labor, human labor, exploitation of earth, exploitation of data. And good luck with that.
Vladan, sorry, I was mistaken. Could you start to wrap up? That we have time for some question and answers.
Sure. No problem at all. Okay. I'm basically wrapping up. I was, yeah, just wanted maybe to. So each of those. So if we think this is like one dimension of an AI, okay. And even in this map, we have a lot of different dimensions. But let's say this is one dimension of the problem. Another dimension of the problem is this, that this AI is basically part of the system. So for example, in our previous research that's called Inside Facebook Algorithmic Factory, when we tried to understand the assembly line within the data, you know, like extraction and production within Facebook. Basically, we wanted to map all the way Facebook is collecting data, how they're selling, and try to make some parts of algorithmic process. So the another problem is that the AI, okay, on the first side, you know, as other machines, it's part of this non-ethical production planetary scale factory, but also it's like embedded in different kinds of processes that are basically telling us what we are seeing, not telling us, like showing us, like being the ones that are censoring, monitoring, filtering, choosing, making decisions about the things that we see, the things that we do when we are applying for a job, when we are, but the problem with that is that, you know, like it's really hard to understand like where they are exactly in this factory, where they are exactly, and what is their point, and what is the, you know, like what is the at the end, like are they doing a good job or not? The problem is we don't have a transparency about how, what are the input, what are the impact of them, where they are in this process, and what kind of like good or bad things they are creating in our life. So for example, all the AI systems that are embedded, for example, within the Facebook algorithmic factory. And then we have like a lot of different aspects of AI that we can speak about. And so for example, I will just want to point out, because organizers of this event wanted me to speak about, mostly about this anatomy of an AI, but there are like two different research and project that I want to point you on. The second one, it's called the Noscope, that I did with Matteo Pasquinelli. And it basically, this website, I hope you are seeing it or not, no, yeah, is basically, you know, dealing with this part of the map, dealing with the question of, okay, what is this? What is this? What is this? Like, what is the, like, around this? So we try to somehow explode again this little part of the problem, and then to try to understand what is, how this, like, how this look like. And then another, again, wide and complex map that is more like poetical than the other one. But it's basically dealing with all of those philosophical concepts around AI technology, and mostly dealing with the problem how to explain now this form of new relation that we have, this kind of new extractivism that we are part in, that it's not just extractivism of nature, extractivism of labor, but it's also extractivism of our bodies, because what we do is basically like everything becomes a territory for extraction, because like what you know, each part of our mind and whatever, it's a basically field for extracting some kind of data and information, then after will be enclosed into like different AI systems. But okay, let me stop here. I think this was like maybe too much for like 9-10 o'clock in the morning for anyone. So
well, thank you very much. It was fascinating as expected. So, and very thought-provoking. So even in this hour of the day. So thanks a lot for this lecture. And I would like to remind our guests that, and also the other speakers that can pop in and ask questions, and the attendees, that we have this Q&A bottom at the bottom of the screen, where you can put your questions to Joler if you have any. Do any of the other speakers would like to ask a question? Okay, so if not, I will start with the question. And since we are on a conference of design and AI, I would like to speak a bit about the role of a designer. So your project is actually a critical mapping projects. I hope that you will agree with me on that. Yeah. Based on a multi-layered, comprehensive, very comprehensive research. And I would like to ask you, in what way do you see the potential of your project in generating new strategies for designers? Or we can ask if at all, or can the designers have any role in these complex infrastructures that you have presented here? So,
well, yeah, I think so. My personal, let's say, like path through this was not feeling that I'm designer at all, not feeling that I'm artist at all, but I did had like a really, let's say, the power of designer, you know, because like that's my like formal education. And of course, okay, I teach at the art academy, but in my mind, I was like retired designer and I was a retired artist for a long time, you know, and, so I was kind of, in my mind, I was like more detective, you know, like, as I said, but then like more, you know, you have I think like I think it's really important that we make maps, you know, like, because like maps help us to navigate through complex territories, you know, like it's okay to have a map when you don't know where you're going, you know, and we don't know where we are going. We don't know where we are going either with understanding the technical infrastructures, or we don't know where we are going with algorithmic transparency. We don't know where we are going with the contemporary capitalism. And also, for me, it's okay to try to have a map, to make a map that will help us maybe to understand the territory. I don't want to create the maps in which I'm giving the final solution, and because I don't know the final solution, I don't know solution for like none of those like. I have some thoughts on some solutions, but like I'm too afraid to, yeah. But in a sense, like I want to create those maps for myself mostly, not so much for the public. But then I think some people will find it useful. In any case, the maps are never neutral. You know, they're most of the time coming from the position of the power. They're all most of the time coming from the position of the master, position of the king, who is saying, okay, this is my empire, and this is how my management, whatever system is working. This is like how we are going to produce this. Rarely it's coming from the position of, let's say, the one who is being one little simple human being. And this is this position of like counter cartography. And basically completely opposite of the one. But the thing is like, you know, like, for example, if we speak about the Facebook algorithmic factor, this last map that you saw, the black one with like a lot of lines, you know, like you know that it's going to be wrong. You know, there is no chance that it's going to be precise, because like the system is so complex. The system is so all the time in the change. So if you are spending 2 years to investigate something, you know, like, but you are drawing something that is changing like every 2 seconds. You know that it's going to be wrong. You know that it's going to, not wrong, but that it will not be precise. But then still, it's the only one that you have, you know. And I think it's really important, if we don't want to be in the position of being completely enslaved by those technologies, in the sense of like, you know, just being forever in the position of the user, then I think it's okay to just to try to understand. And then for me, the one of the ways that I know how to do this is through making the maps. You know, maybe, you know, I can do it also by making the books, but maps are for me something. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Just 1 second. I have something really. Hello.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, you never know what. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some urgent things. Yeah, I was asked if you could please stop the sharing that we'll be able to see us. We actually almost, thank you. We're actually almost out of time. So I will read 2 questions which were sent to us by the the attendees, and if you could really shortly comment on both of them. So I will read both of them. The first one is from Saifan Hurgini. Thank you for a great lecture. Could you give an example of this new extractivism? And the second by Ula, awesome presentation, made me look at this from a different angle. I would like to ask which part of the graph diagram was the hardest to investigate? What was the most inaccessible market domain?
Well, example of new extractivism. A new extractivism, it's an old extractivism, you know, like it's starting from the old extractivism in a sense, okay, typical colonial extraction of you know, labor, of resources, in a sense, in this big black map, the anatomy of an AI, we saw how, you know, how from the bottom you have extraction of let's say, natural elements and human labor, but also it's extraction of data. And this extraction of data, this is like, I think the new extractivism, basically it's like triangle between extraction of human labor, nature, and data. And then this part with data, it's kind of multi-layered or multi-dimensional in a sense of like having the one example, for example, our body, our mind, our conscious, subconscious, and everything is a new territory, you know. It's a new, okay, it's old territory, but it's kind of new territory. And in a way, so now we have a race. We have like hundreds and hundreds of startups, big companies, small companies, trying to basically enclose or to capture, to conquer something. You know, is it our blood, you know, beeps, or it's our like lungs doing this and data about this, or it's our dreams, or it's our emotions, or it's like whatever. So it's a kind of race for conquering this territory that is going deeper and deeper and deeper. So location, it's one, but then it's not enough. You need to go deeper into, I don't know, like movement, our gait, our like whatever, you know, sexuality. So everything around us is basically, there is like thousands and thousands of different processes and different agents that are trying to extract information, trying to quantify data about something. Is it our DNA or whatever? Okay, so it's about our body. So this is one, let's say, like a territory. Another territory, it's whatever we produce will be digitized, will be quantified, will have a stamp of Google or whoever who will then put this into their universe of whatever. So whatever we are, whatever we produce, whatever, everything is, so it's part of this kind of new extractivism, and new extractivism is basically extracting data, extracting information from, mostly from us, from our bodies, from nature, from whatever.
I think that we will skip the next question. There are so many other questions that I would love to ask, and I saw that there are other questions as well in the audience. We have to pass on to the next panel. So I would like to thank you again for this wonderful talk, and really great. So thanks.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much.